Hello everyone, it's week 9 in Humanities 103 Mythology. Here is the week 9 module, and you'll see that our topic this week is the apocalypse. Now, I know that, that things are going on in the world right now that certainly have prompted many people to ponder whether there is such a thing as biblical end times, or if we're seeing, events that could escalate into, I don't even want to say the words, but you know what I'm talking about. And so I have to say, I honestly even thought about perhaps just removing this module at this time, but it's super important that we look at, first of all, the fact that people from the moment that they could open their mouth and tell stories have been telling stories about the end of the world, either the end of humanity as we know it, the end of the planet. The stories all vary. And we touched on that a bit last week when we talked about the flood myths, because most of the flood myths, the whole point is to wipe out, humanity and start over again, renew, rebirth. And apocalyptic myths are built right into that pattern. But they're a little more broad in their topics than just floods. So that's the one thing we want to keep in mind, that these stories are ubiquitous. Most cultures over time. So this isn't something that we just sort of, woke up to with the dawning of the age of Aquarius or something. So we want to look at some of those apocalyptic myths from ancient people. And then we also want to look at what were some of the events in the more recent past that prompted people to imagine that the end times had come. And we're going to call those, the 10 apocalypses that obviously didn't happen. So the other thing is, nobody can say, don't worry about it, it's not going to happen. I'm not even going to go there. But the point is that most of these myths are exaggerated, they generate fear, but they don't happen. So keep that in the back of your mind. All right, so a couple of articles and then 3 videos from Crash Course Mythology. One, an overview of the apocalyptic myth, and one maybe some of you have heard, from movies and things, Ragnarok, the Norse idea of end times or the apocalypse. And then an interesting sort of collection of stories or legends from the Aztec civilization called the Legend of the Fifth Sun. And it's really interesting to see how the idea of apocalypse and rebirth is built into their culture just on a regular basis. So on a very specific timeline, everything gets wiped out and everything gets reborn. It's kind of an interesting way to look at it. And then obviously your discussion. I included this screenshot of the homepage for this particular article that I posted for you, The Resiliency of Apocalyptic Belief. And the reason I wanted to show you here, you'll see the menu along the left-hand side. This is part of a whole series of articles and videos from PBS Frontline. And this is the one that I want you to read, The Resiliency of Apocalyptic Belief. However, if this is something that is interesting to you, that's caught your attention lately, maybe something that you don't know much about, you're curious when people talk about the book of Revelation, which is in the New Testament of the Christian Bible, when people talk about the Antichrist or some of these ideas, that this would be a good source. It's a good, credible source of information. These are all from different scholars, biblical scholars, or sociologists, or historians. And so anyway, it's just there if this is something that you'd like to know more about. So here's our discussion for this week. So it's a two-parter. You're going to be posting your reading response. Well, it's not really a reading response. It's actually kind of almost a creative writing response by Thursday, and then by Sunday, you'll be responding to 3 other people. So in a nutshell, what I would like you to do is to think about an event that prompted people to get into that apocalyptic mindset. Now, one of your readings has a whole list of those throughout history, but if you want to, you can go online and do some research. But just the same way that I asked you to find a real flood myth, I want you to find a real event or period of time when things were happening that prompted people to imagine that this was end of times. And then I want you to put down the pertinent details: when, where, who, how, etc. And then I want you to use your imagination, and I want you to go back into time and imagine that you are communicating with a person who is living through that event or situation. And this person can be imaginary. It could be a historical person that you read about. But I want you to really picture who this person is and what they might be feeling. And then I'd like you to write them a personal letter. And this letter should include a minimum of these 3 things. So acknowledge what they're going through and how you imagine they might be feeling about it. And then I want you, because obviously you're a visitor from the future and you are privy to the information about how this event actually turned out, I want you to go ahead and tell them. Okay, so we're not too concerned about, altering the timeline of history. So you're going to reassure them that what they're fearing or anticipating does not come to pass. But I want you to tell them how it actually does unfold. And then the third thing I want you to do is to really feel some empathy for this person and suggest some things that they could do in the meantime to assist them either on a practical level in the resolution of this event or situation, how they might keep themselves safe or their families, how they might survive in this situation, or how they might manage this from an emotional or cognitive standpoint. If they're feeling fearful or they're feeling anxious, what do you suggest that they do in order to manage those feelings? All right, so this should be an interesting letter to write. And then, of course, your peer review. So I have not obviously screenshot the entire thing here, which means you have to go into the instructions and read what the prompts are for the peer response.